Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, May 13th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's a lot of money, some $300 billion. But that's what Governor Newsom is now proposing in his budget plans for California. Some of that money could be coming your way to help fight inflation and higher costs, especially at the pump. KPBS reporter John Carroll with a look at where the money is going.
More than 2 years out from the beginning of the pandemic, when the governor put the state into lockdown and the economy cratered, the Golden State's financial picture has rocketed into recovery.
It's about 5% higher total budget, about 15.4% above where we were in January.
The budget revealed today is called the May Revise, when the governor rolls out his proposal using the most recent tax revenue data. Newsom and state legislators must now come to an agreement on how to spend a nearly $100 billion surplus. Some top-line takeaways: $400 rebates to vehicle owners, up to 2 vehicles each. He first proposed that in March, but has been at odds with leaders in the legislature who prefer relief targeted to lower and middle-income people. And he's ruled out a Republican proposal for suspending the state gas tax.
Why would we suspend a gas tax and allow these same corporate interests and companies to pocket those dollars by not passing them on to consumers, when there's a better approach, which is putting money in people's pockets more quickly?
For folks who don't own a car, Newsom is proposing $750 million in grants to public transit agencies, allowing them to provide free transit for 3 months. Renters hit hard during the pandemic would benefit from a proposal to spend almost $3 billion in extended emergency rental assistance and nearly $1.5 billion to help Californians pay their utility bills.
We believe in equity. We believe in fairness, which means access and affordability.
The governor says the state will do all it can to improve access to abortion, $125 million in total to advance reproductive health. He praised San Diego State Senator Tony Atkins for moving forward on a constitutional amendment to protect that access.
This reflects, I think, $19.6 billion more of investments than was reflected in the January budget.
The governor's budget spends big on public education, more than $128 billion, which would roll out TK, transitional kindergarten, throughout the state. The $300 billion spending plan invests in dozens more programs, including climate change and how to deal with the drought. Now begins 6 weeks of negotiations with the legislature. They must approve the budget by June 15th, and the governor must sign it by June 30th. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Jump right.
Activists gathered outside of Sempra Energy's downtown headquarters today. As KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayer shows us, they're protesting what they say are attempts by the utility company to hike rates and block green energy initiatives.
If you're not terrified, you are not paying attention.
Activists representing several environmental and community groups gathered outside of Sempra's headquarters Friday morning during an online shareholder meeting. The company is the parent organization of SDG&E. Among those gathered was Scott Kelly, a leader of the environmental group San Diego 350. He says the protesters are fighting what they see as attempts by Sempra to block climate action and perpetuate the fossil fuel industry. That's in addition to steep hikes on San Diegans' energy bills.
They're having a shareholders meeting right now, and they're discussing the future. We were out here last year, and they refused to deal with the Paris Climate Accord. We're getting towards 1.5 degrees C. They agreed to do this, and they're going to blow way past this into a climate chaos.
When asked for comment, a Sempra Energy spokesperson said in an email statement that we respect the right of demonstrators to express their views peacefully. Last night, Sempra sent out a news release saying the board of directors declared a quarterly dividend for the investor-owned utility shareholders. East County BIPOC co-founder Danielle Wilkerson says while stockholders are padding their pockets, environmental issues are disproportionately affecting some of San Diego's most vulnerable communities.
That there are not one but two peak power plants in El Cajon, in a community that already doesn't have a lot of greenery, that already has several freeways running through it, that already has pretty shoddy public transportation. We were appalled to find out that they were contributing to the poor air quality.
Protesters at the event asked Sempra for transparency, lower rates, and a rapid transition to renewable energy, such as solar and wind sources. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
The Biden administration's effort to terminate a controversial Trump-era asylum policy appears to be in further jeopardy. Today, a federal judge said he will soon make a final decision in a case challenging the administration's plans. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis has more.
Title 42 is a policy enacted by the Trump administration early in the pandemic that has been used to turn asylum seekers away from the border nearly 2 million times. It gives Customs and Border Protection agents the ability to turn people away without due process. President Joe Biden promised to end the policy on May 23rd, but a federal lawsuit is trying to keep that program alive. The federal district judge in Louisiana, who is overseeing the case, has hinted that he will rule against the administration on procedural grounds. Pedro Rios is an activist with American Friends Service Committee here in San Diego.
I unfortunately anticipate that the ruling will be to continue to uphold Title 42.
Rios says that this is part of a larger strategy of conservative lawmakers using the courts to enact immigration policy.
I think what it represents is that there's a failure of due process and a failure of checks and balances in the U.S. government, where one judge can make a decision that has disastrous impacts to people who are seeking safety, where one judge decides that thousands of people no longer have the right under U.S. law or under international agreements to seek asylum in the United States.
Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
More progress today in southern Orange County, where San Diego firefighters are among those helping contain this week's brush fire. It destroyed dozens of multi-million-dollar homes, and now some residents are being allowed to return. Jeff Nguyen is in Laguna Niguel.
And my husband just brought me this photo, and I was just so like, oh my gosh, I'm just so touched.
It's easy to understand why Lynn Morey gripped her wedding photo so tightly.
So I'm in shock right now because you can see our house was right here, so we have total loss damage.
Our camera was in front of Morey's home Wednesday night as wind fueled the coastal fire in Laguna Niguel. The intense flames blew out the upstairs windows. Diane Buckles' home was still standing after she came back from a trip, but her neighbors weren't so lucky.
It's devastating. It looks like a war zone. I mean, I can't even believe it. I heard it was bad, but this is so devastating.
At Richard and Sandy Vogel's home, the birdhouse is all that's left. This is a photo of them enjoying their pool with their grandkids last week. Their son Matthew could hardly contain his emotions.
You know, just growing up here, having a good time. I mean, you know, my parents always treated me well, and this is hardcore, you know, straight up.
Keith Morey was reunited with his personal computer and that photo of his wedding to Lynn.
We were married 4 years ago, but we've been together for 14 years. And it's a great picture.
Thanks to firefighters who went into their home and found what they could salvage.
It's a small little victory, right? In a pretty devastating day.
This is a silver lining, yes.
Even though Lynn's wedding ring was lost in the fire and all they had were the clothes on their backs.
So it just brings us closer together and shows that makes us stronger as a couple.
That was Jeff Nguyen reporting. Did you feel it in your area? At around 6:30 this morning, residents woke up to a 3.5 magnitude earthquake. According to USGS, it struck just south of the Palomar Observatory in northeast San Diego. At first, the quake registered as a 3.7, but USGS then changed the data to 3.5 a few minutes later. There have been no reports of any damage or injury. Hats off to the class of 2022. Thousands of San Diego State University graduates are celebrating through the weekend. Commencement ceremonies kicked off today at Viejas Arena and continue through Sunday. More than 11,000 grads will have the opportunity to participate in 7 ceremonies. We heard from graduates who say while the pandemic did impact their college experience, they still made memories and achieved their goals.
I left as a sophomore, second year, came back a fourth year. I mean, crazy difference.
I'm from Philadelphia, and I've always wanted to come out here to California for school, so this is definitely a big moment, and I'm done here, I did it, I'm staying here, I'm super excited to see what else this city has for me.
Really rewarding to see a goal that we've had since I was a child. I was told I was going to college, and now here we are. So it's really cool.
It's just like the culmination of all my hard work for pretty much my whole life.
And in case you're wondering, the top 3 majors for this graduating class are psychology, interdisciplinary studies, and criminal justice. There are plenty of jobs for grabs at what was dubbed Jobapalooza, Mission Beach's first ever hiring festival. All kinds of positions from food services to ride operators, retail, and management are available. Wages vary, plus extra perks including free lunches and tickets. There was plenty of music, food, and fun at today's job fair at Belmont Park, which wrapped up a short time ago.
We just thought, why don't we create an experience around it, right? Ultimately, we have a job fair, really cool. You come there, it's really boring, and you see a bunch of booths and you talk to somebody. Let's have a DJ, let's ride some rides, let's eat some ice cream, and let's get a job.
Positions are available for those just starting a career or for those who are experienced. Applications are also accepted online. If you checked your 401k balance lately, it's likely taken a hit. Inflation is one of the reasons stocks are sliding. But a report this week shows it might have leveled off last month. SDSU's Mira Kopik explains how this is all tied together in the Friday Business Report.
1 month a trend doesn't make. But what this kind of signaled is that the Federal Reserve may need to continue its more aggressive rate increases of 0.5 point versus maybe going back to a 1/4 point, which they were estimating through the end of next year. And also, one of the things that the market was reacting to is the potential for the Federal Reserve to actually raise rates in between their meetings. So that was a level of concern. So this is one thing that a lot analysts in the market are looking at. And so as part of this process over the last few months and the psychology of inflation, the stock market has lost over $7 trillion in value since the beginning of the year. So that is a major concern. We're entering kind of what would be considered bear territory by most stock analysts. But many people have these stocks in their 401ks as part of mutual funds and whatever. So they're looking at the value of their general investments.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the heavy toll the war in Ukraine is taking on children and their families. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The nationwide shortage of baby formula is leading some parents to try to buy breast milk from neighbors or strangers on Facebook. But that's not safe, according to the director of a milk bank at UC San Diego. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser says the bank vigorously screens its breast milk donations.
The UC Health Milk Bank is just one of 31 milk banks in all of North America. It primarily serves mothers who couldn't carry their babies to full term.
Our main goal is to provide pasteurized donor milk for premature babies in the NICU, but about 30 to 40% of milk from such a milk bank does go to outpatients and families at home.
Dr. Lisa Stellwagen is the director. She says the UC Health Milk Bank collects breast milk from women who sign up to donate extra milk after going through a rigorous screening process,
including a lengthy health questionnaire, a blood test, approval from the mother's provider, and then milk is delivered to or shipped to the milk bank.
The milk is tested and pasteurized and then sold to hospitals to use with premature babies.
And these babies do best in the hospital if they receive their mother's own milk, but many of them are born early because the mom is ill. and she may not make milk on a normal timetable, and there may be a gap in her provision of milk that can be filled with donor milk.
Stellwagen says these babies shouldn't get formula. They need human breast milk to avoid potential bacterial infections. But many hospitals still give premature babies formula if they don't have donor milk. Stellwagen says the current formula shortage isn't impacting hospitals because they have their own supply. But she's worried about infants who are at home and might not be getting the special formula they need.
So really the concern right now are these children that are at home that have a need for a specialized medical formula that they may not be able to get. And so could donor milk be an adequate, or a good nutrition for some of those babies? And the answer is yes. So I think there's a lot of concern about those babies that they can't find enough milk, and the donor milk banks are happy to step up and provide milk if they have the capabilities to do so.
UCSD's milk bank does provide milk to some babies at home, but at a price of $4 to $5 an ounce, which adds up to $6,000 a month. Insurance typically doesn't cover the cost, but Stellwagen says some families do buy directly from UCSD. Given this high cost and the formula shortage, parents might be tempted to buy breast milk through social media. Stellwagen says that's not safe.
If the comparison is like blood, and so there are risks in using raw milk from somebody that you don't know, that hasn't been vetted, the milk hasn't been tested, most particularly milk that can be obtained from a public site or on the internet. That might be shipped or handled improperly, could put a baby's health at risk.
The UC Health Milk Bank is looking for more volunteers to donate milk, and Stellwagen says the formula shortage is a good reminder how great the need is. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Who gets to go to space? That's an answer that's beginning to become more inclusive and diverse as more institutions and organizations look to who will have access to the final frontier. KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim spoke with the first Mexican-born woman to ever go to space as a citizen science astronaut.
Ever since she was a little girl, Katia Echezarreta always looked up at the stars and dreamed of going to space.
Even my middle name is Celeste, which means of the sky. So it's just been a part of me for my entire life.
And now that dream is coming true. Echezarreta will be traveling to space on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket ship as a citizen science astronaut after being selected out of 7,000 applicants by Space for Humanity, an organization focused on making space more inclusive.
My name is Kat Echezarreta, and I'm an electrical...
Born in Guadalajara, Mexico, Echezarreta will be the first Mexican-born woman to ever travel to space. It's an honor she doesn't take lightly after always being told space wasn't for her.
Being able to do this is changing that narrative to the point where a little girl from Mexico who comes from maybe the same city where I was born and is telling their parents or their teacher that they want to go to space, and they're not going to hear those words anymore.
She moved to the U.S. at 7 years old and never forgot her dream. Studying to become an electrical engineer, first at San Diego City College, then UCLA, and Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. At every turn, she sought out opportunities to get closer to space travel, turning an internship at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab into a full-time gig as a NASA engineer.
I've been able to work on 5 NASA missions within 1 year of being at JPL as a full-time engineer. I'm an electrical engineer.
Echezarreta, who is also a TikTok star and host of a Netflix science program, is known for pushing back against stereotypes. She's tired of always being told she had to, quote, look the part and be professional to excel in STEM.
As if me wearing a skirt meant that I was not going to be a good engineer. And it's irrelevant. The way that any of us choose to look, that in the way that any of us choose to dress really has nothing to do with what we're capable of and what our work is like.
And that's a big part of why being the first Mexican-born woman in space and defining her career on her own terms are so important to her, because she's confident she won't be the last.
I am someone who is just like them, and if they want to, they can be just like me as well.
Echezarreta will begin space training a week before launch. The launch date is May 20th. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
Our nice warming trend will continue right on through the weekend, and then we're going to be faced with an onshore flow that will be cooling the coast and the valleys, especially for the second half of the weekend. And then by the time we get to next week, it's back to that marine layer where you have those evening and morning low-level clouds, and then it burns off during the day, and of course that will return as we head into next week. Heading into San Diego County for this evening, temperatures falling back to the lower 50s for Ramona, mid-50s for Escondido, and closer to the coast, some lower 50s. San Diego 59, Chula Vista 58, Borrego Springs falling back to 69, Mount Laguna 59. And again, we're going to be seeing temperatures a little cooler right along the coastal areas, but more interior. You can see that we have warmer conditions and light winds and extremely dry conditions across the desert southwest. But again, with the onshore flow, that will surely keep things just slightly cooler from LA down into San Diego, and it's going to be tranquil. So if you look at futurecasts throughout the day on Saturday, not much for any cloud coverage. You can slowly start to see some of those low-level clouds working their way in late Saturday and then again early Sunday morning. So that's what I mean when I say the marine layer. It's surely back, especially you can see those clouds building offshore. By the time you wake up on Sunday morning, you'll notice those low-level clouds. But you do get another batch of pretty warm conditions, especially around El Cajon, Ramona, and Escondido. Your temperatures tomorrow will be in the 90s, so pretty hot. Triple digits for Borrego Springs. Even Mount Laguna, you'll get up to 75 degrees. Notice, though, you get the 70s closer to the coast, and you do have ample sunshine. You can see that the cool down, it begins as we head into next week, and then how each and every day we start off with some of that fog and then sunshine. Same can be said the further inland you go for your Tuesday and even your Wednesday. Some patchy fog across the mountains, trending cooler starting Monday for the start of the next work weekend. Around the desert, triple digits all week long. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Michelle Rotella.
San Diego Opera's Detour series is all about taking audiences off the beaten path of a traditional night at the opera. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando goes behind the scenes to speak with the creative team of Aging Magician.
No one can quite describe what Aging Magician is, not even the people who created it.
It's part opera, part theater, part concert, part spectacle.
There's, singing, there's acting, there's performance art, there's magic.
To me, it feels very much like its own thing.
And that makes it the perfect show for San Diego Opera's Detour series, says creative producer Beth Morrison.
Yeah, so my company, Beth Morrison Projects, was sort of founded to take opera in another direction. And so what that has meant is that I bring sort of singular artists together to create work that really defies boundaries and stretches the meaning of what opera can be.
Composer Paola Prestini says Aging Magician centers on Rindy Eckert's Harold, a clockmaker at the end of his life.
But the beautiful thing about Harold, this character that, that Rindy wrote, is that Harold has a massive imagination. And so in this imagination are all these voices. And so really what you get is this kind of fertile bringing to life of a very beautiful imagination of this character, Harold.
The Brooklyn Youth Chorus provides the voices Harold hears in his head, says director Julian Crouch.
But he's sort of got a chorus that is a little bit like his inner voice, or a little bit like kind of spirit guides.
Poke at him, they pester him, they scold him, they cajole him, they laugh with him. They are his imagination.
Designing a stage version of Harold's imagination began with a drawing 10 years ago.
And so I had asked Mark Stewart to create a face that replicated Rindy, that he could enter at the very end, almost like entering his own imagination, and play and make music out of.
Instrument designer Mark Stewart turned it into a giant Rube Goldberg musical device inspired by Coney Island.
Yes, Coney Island.
Kind of Coney Island, which is also a giant musical instrument that the entire chorus play.
Another design element in the show is paper.
Paper is an element that is used throughout the entire production. Harold is writing a book, so paper is there and it's inherent. But then The choir is also using paper all the time, and so they'll pull the paper up and there'll be projection on the paper.
I think the projection works particularly well on this. So there's a lot of paper on the set, and the chorus lift up sheets of paper and use paper at various points, and we project onto that. So the projection is very much kind of living within the piece.
And the chorus breathes life into the paper with some simple but beautiful puppetry.
They bring like elements of joy and interest and wonder, I think, into the piece.
And that's exactly what audiences may need after struggling through 2 years of a pandemic.
It's a very tender show in the sense that it approaches questions of time and legacy and also death through the eyes of children. And that, I think, lends it a very different approach. So I feel like people are going to process this in a really visceral way.
Aging Magician uses the transformative power of art to help us process complex feelings and emotions during challenging times.
This is a piece about humanity. It's a piece about legacy. It's a piece that brings joy.
You can experience the joy of San Diego Opera's Aging Magician at 3 performances this weekend at the Balboa Theater. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.